Wednesday through Friday from 4 to 7, and Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 7. So please stop by if you can. And let me also say that the work is for sale. And, and if you are, super inspired, you can purchase the work via Artsy. And I think Susan is going to put the Artsy link in the chat. So that if anybody wants to grab the link, you can grab it that way.
I'll put the link in when we get to the presentation, because I have it in there. I'll link it in.
Sure. Okay. And we're going to rather informally ask questions, but I'll ask you to put your questions in the chat. And when I finish asking my questions, then we'll go to the chat and see what questions there are. Or if you want to hold your question till the end, then we can unmute and take questions from the audience at the end.
Sure.
So without further ado, we're going to see a PowerPoint that will show us some installation shots, and then we'll look at each piece in the show. So Susan, are you ready to share the screen? There we go.
Here we go. All right.
And we are artists, not techno wizards, but doing our best. So here's the great mystery. Give you a little flavor of what it's like in the gallery. And you could see the scale. These pieces are quite sizable. And let's start with Ellen. So Ellen, I love how iconic these works are. And when I'm in the gallery, I see people stopping by to take pictures from the street. And I also love how involved I get with close viewing. The application of paint, also like the shift in scale when you're looking in from outside, it's one thing, and then you come next to it and it's like very human scaled when you're interacting with each piece. So also the color relationships shift as you move around the gallery. And I'd just like you to speak about your intentions in creating this kind of iconic work.
Thanks, Karen. And I have to say that Karen asks the best questions, so I will try to have answers that are equal to her questions. I work very intuitively, and I often only understand my work in retrospect. So for several years, I was focused on my series that I called Dark Matter, that were these dark circular or oval forms, and they gradually morphed. I mean, they were also on strong grounds, but they gradually morphed from being very foreboding to being very meditative. But in the midst of that, can you show the, Susan, can you show the pink one? The pinky, that's right. Okay. In the midst of Dark Matter, this painting emerged, and I didn't quite know what to call it, so I just called it Totem, but it always felt very figurative and very female to me. And it was something...
Ellen, excuse me, just if there's people here that didn't see Dark Matter, maybe you could just describe the work from Dark Matter briefly.
Okay, great. The forms were very reductive, often just maybe 2 or 3 dark forms on a strong color ground. That it came out of really the election in 2016 and my sense of desolation. And then gradually it moved to a very meditative place. But the forms were all this very dark. It's not black. If you look at it closely, you'll see that it's made up of green and blue. I don't use any black in my paintings. So it's Jenkins green and cerulean blue, and they are layered. And at a distance, it looks black, it looks very dark, and but it's also very mysterious. And I have loved that mystery of that darkness that's made out of these two beautiful colors. And so that was dark, that's where dark matter came from. Is that enough, Karen, or?
I'm sure.
Okay, I mean, if you don't know the work, you can go on my website and there's a whole page called Dark Matter, but you
Well,
will see that this really is other, because it has a figurative quality to it, or at least it did to me.
that's what I was going to say, that it went from really very abstract relationships to bringing in some more imagery and a little more figuration.
Exactly. So, at the time, I knew it was a really powerful piece, but it just sort of whispered of something, but I was still very much continuing the thread of dark matter. And then this was 2017. And then in 2019, Blue Totem arrived. No,
Anyway.
yeah. Okay, that's Blue Totem. Now that's very, very different, but it still seemed to be what I seem to want to make totems. Right? So I kept struggling with continuing with dark matter, but it wasn't really happening for me anymore. I felt like I had said what I needed to say with it. And so, I just sort of took that in. And the very first painting of the new series was Red Totem. And once she emerged, it was like, okay, I know where I'm going with all of this. And it felt very urgent in a way that, was, I guess one could explain in terms of, you have to go back. No, there she is. Nope. Go forward again. One more. There she is. That's red totem, or totem red. I mean, I switched my, anyway. So there she was, again, feeling very female to me. And so then I just started making some preliminary drawings and making these paintings at a time. These paintings were all made in in the fall, really, late summer into fall, during a time when, we were in the midst of election, I'll call it fervor, chaos. We had, a woman who had been selected as a vice presidential running mate, who then, I'm happy to say, has become our vice president. But it's really a time when women are coming into their power in all areas of life. And it just felt like the perfect time to delve into some of these really enduring symbols of womanhood, I guess. And this is much more specific than I have ever been about anything that I have ever painted.
So that leads me to my next question.
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
Can you speak to the associations that the combination of imagery and palette bring to the viewer? So speaking to people who have come into the gallery, I see questions about, what exactly is this imagery? Is it erotic? Is it orgasmic? Is it female anatomy? Is it birthing? Or is it, as your titles imply, totems?
It can be all of those. Maybe that's the great mystery. I don't know. There are lots of things that one could think of. I have worked with organic forms in nature for decades, and sometimes they are more realistic, sometimes they are much more abstract. But I think if you went back and looked at my work over the years, the references to the female body are definitely there. And eroticism and birth are often seen as very different, very separate in our culture, and yet they are all part and parcel of a woman's sexuality. It's part of the sexual cycle, and birth is certainly part of that. And for anyone who has known me for probably more than 5 minutes, know that I spent close over 40 years working with birthing women. So it isn't surprising to me that these images emerge, but I can go back and see them in work that I did in art school, when the last thing in the world I was thinking of was that I would have a child, or that I would be working with women giving birth for so much of my working life. So it's kind of interesting to me. So the paintings are iconic, they're symbolic. They're also, I feel, more declarative than some of my other work. Although Karen, when I said to Karen Gibbons, with whom I shared a studio for 20 years, so I feel like she's the expert on my work. And I said, they're very declarative. And she said, well, they wouldn't be an Ellen Chuse if they weren't declarative. But I think that these are more so, and I'm ambivalent about that, because I've always valued ambiguity in my work. And I strive for that. You know, what are we looking at? Is it something very small? Is it something very large? What are we looking at? And I want people to bring their own experiences to it. And I don't, you know, whatever my narrative is my narrative, but you might bring a completely different narrative to it. And that's fine with me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing from the viewers today what associations they're bringing, because this is really a wealth of material here even though they're so simple, which I think is the ambiguity, which is beautiful.
Thank you. I did want to say that I did feel that I wanted to really acknowledge the origins of this to some degree, which came from the prehistoric Venus totems. So that's why I was more, you know, I have some that are entitled Venus, and I have one that's Athena, because it took me into thinking about other goddesses. I've done other goddess pieces, but I might maybe call them goddess, but nothing, you know, beyond that. So I got very specific, and then I just went back to totems. So
Well, this question might be kind of what a goddess embodies. My question is about embodying contradictions. So I noticed that at the same time, these pieces feel heavy and light. They feel floating, but they feel grounded. They feel huge, but then they also feel human scale. Can you speak to this mystery?
yes. It's interesting. I mean, I wonder, again, because I work intuitively. I don't say this is, you know, I'm going to make the figure and the ground equally strong in color, so that they hold one another. You know, there's never going to be anything misty. Nothing's ever going to go off in the mist in my work, as far as I can tell so far. But I think that's the best thing. In terms of the idea of, you know, is it floating? Is it grounded? That's the best I can do with that. I can say that, you know, in terms of the size, I make small things, but I really like to make a big gesture with my body when I'm drawing. And you know, after working on a group of small things, this was some years ago, I just felt so pent up that I made a mark in the middle of my wall, and I leaped out to the right and made a mark, and I leaped out to the left and made a mark. And then I made a paper that was that big, so that I could make a gesture that took me as far as my body could go without actually leaving the ground. And so I guess these are sort of sized. I mean, I like a good sized paper. I mean, these don't seem enormous to me. Athena is pretty big, but you know, she's really only, she's only 62 inches high. She's just a little bit taller than I have become. So she feels, you know, it feels like a scale that I can work with. At the same time, I think it's the figure itself that makes it seem so monumental. She takes up a lot of space, if that
She
makes
takes up
sense.
space in the picture plane, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then I wanted to ask you about the three that are a similar composition. Maybe Susan, you could go to the installation view of where you see all three of them.
Yes, yes.
Uh, and so these are variations on a theme. I wonder if you can talk about what the color variation, oh, that's good.
Yes.
What it signifies.
Okay, I will try. I can tell you how this came to be. In a previous artist conversation with another gallery member who asked me, I talked about I don't really know when I start out where I'm going to end up. I can't tell you what color it's going to be. The color emerges over time. And he asked me if I'd ever thought about repeating an image and changing the color and see how that would affect the feeling of the piece. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And the very first one I did was the one that it appears white. It's not really white. It has a kind of a glow to it, of a kind of a bluish glow. And that emerged. I had come back from Block Island, where there are lots of stones and rocks, and people are incessantly building little rock totems. So I think I was channeling that. And I also had been thinking about and looking at the prehistoric little stone figures. And one of the things that, I've been thinking about this since Karen asked me some of these questions. And I think what I loved about the prehistoric figures were that they didn't have heads. And that was very specific because the culture wanted them to be seen as fertility figures, figures of abundance. And it was only later that the Greeks made Venus the goddess of beauty. And I have always I even thought back to from 100 years ago, I always loved the body as landscape. I was never going to make portraits. So here I have, I don't have to think about a head. It's perfect, right? But I was thinking of the stones and the stacked stones, and I wanted to get something that had a somewhat stonier feel. I wanted to move outside of these very dark images that I'd been making. But then I really loved the figure itself. And I thought, well, this is the perfect time to experiment. And so the second one, Venus 2, is the blue on the yellow orange. And the only thing that was intentional there was that I wasn't going to make it red. There's so much red in the show. I could make everything red. It would be very easy for me. And it was really a challenge. There's red in there, but don't, make something that is not red. And I also, my intention initially was to stay with the dark form, that dark matter form of the green layered with the blue, layered with the green, that comes off as a black from a distance. But as I was layering, the blue just spoke to me. And so, there it is. And then the next one, which is has been much more of a struggle for me. And some of you know that I had it professionally photographed, and then I went back and repainted it. It's sometimes learning when to let go, but it's not quite red. But again, playing around, it's a little bit more blue. The figure is a little more blue in real life, as they say. But I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I tend to go
It's
on.
interesting that you tell us of your struggles, but they look just effortless and very certain. And I love being able to go back and forth among these three and compare and contrast. So thank you, Alan.
Thank
And
you.
I see some questions are appearing in the chat. We're going to come back to the chat after we talk to the artists in Field of Vision. So Susan, are we ready to move on to Field of Vision? And is Fred here? Susan, you're muted, so I'm not sure if you're saying that Fred's not here.
I don't think he's here yet. So I think what we should do, if it's okay with you, Gail, I think
Oh.
we should move on to your work. And then when Fred comes, we can,
Sounds good.
yeah. Okay.
Sure,
All right.
works for me.
Okay. This
So we'll
is,
see the installation shots here. As if we were in the gallery. And I get a little sneak preview of Fred's. And now Gail Flanery. So you see her amazing workstation.
Yes, that's at the shop, the print shop.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so let's go through her 3 pieces and then I'll ask her some questions. So this is one, another, and the third. Beautiful.
kind of details.
So, and the detail, yes. So Gail, I love how each of these 3 pieces seem to inhabit a different world, even though we can see that they're all Gail Flanery's, right? So I'm wondering what goes into that sense of place that you give your work.
Well, none of my work, I cannot separate myself from nature when I'm working. That is definitely what feeds me, my color, my form. It just, nature, what's around me, what I'm seeing gives me more than I could imagine. So pulling from nature, I will consider certain color harmonies. I will then look at forms. And a lot of the experimenting, though, comes from the process of what I'm doing with paper. I pretty much work on paper and fabric, and I'm a printmaker. I think of myself as a printmaker. I am able to what printmaking allows me is to let my imagery grow. And I'm able to keep exploring, and I'm able to in a way, I think it prevents me in a way from winding up with sort of a predictable style, I guess, in the sense that it's either on fabric or it's on paper or it's, but
So let's talk about the piece that on fabric. Can we see that one, Susan?
Sure.
Please? Sure.
Cool. I love that piece.
So yeah, and I don't know if the viewers can see that it's on fabric, but it also includes paper. And can you talk about your process here? And I know you were trying to explain to me the difference between monotype and monoprint, and
yeah.
I think that might come in here.
I'll try to be
But what drew you to work on paper? I mean, on fabric.
on fabric. Texture. I was seeking a certain texture, and I wanted to see how the ink would how I could put the ink down on fabric, how the fabric would hold the ink, and it let me experiment. That was a torn shower curtain, basically. I ripped an old, it was an old fabric shower curtain, and I took it into the studio with the master printer, and I said, Kathy, can I print on this thing? And she said, yeah, sure. And so I started to play. The plates that I used were also, they
So
were
is it
called,
more than one plate? Is it
no,
or is it different?
there are 2 plates. There are 2
Okay.
plates there. But basically I had glued, they're called silk plates, and I glue silk down, and then I ink and play on this silk that is glued to a hard surface. and I drew with acrylic, and I drew the shapes, these lines, which came from some trees that I probably remembered I saw while I was walking around. And then I inked them up. So it was kind of me using a fabric surface with a fabric surface. And I wanted to see if I could layer it. So there are plates underneath that I ran through the press, and then I printed sheets of paper, and I glued them chine collé, a type of bonding, if you will, and that went through the press.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about the chine collé because that appears in all three of these.
Yes.
Can we run through them again, Susan, please?
Yes.
So you want to describe which is, wait,
Sure.
can you go back for a second? Can you describe where the paper is in this piece?
Well, it's all paper, which is the beauty.
No, but I mean, the chine
But it's
collé
basically one piece of paper adhered to another, and kind of the paper really is actually bonded, and that's the pressure of running it through the press. Chine collé started a long time ago, back kind of Picasso's days, back in Paris, and when a lot of artists were able to get Asian papers. They now could get their hands on these beautiful, exquisite Asian papers, handmade papers, and they were like, how do we use these? They're so tissuey. We need to figure out a way that we can adhere this texture onto these other sheets of paper. And it was a whole process that was kind of invented then. And I love the idea that the paper isn't actually glued down, that it's bonded, and it can also seem embossed at times, depending on the pressure that you're running it through the press. This is all tech. I also love to fly fish, so I love tech, any kind of tech.
yeah, I mean,
tech, I love it.
it's so interesting because you almost can't tell which is ink and which is the paper until you get really involved in looking at it. Can we go to the orange one again, Susan, the larger one?
Hold on. Oops.
And I'm sorry, I'm not remembering your titles.
Oh, that's okay. I never remember them.
So this has chine collé as well.
Yes, it does. And there are pieces there, you can see certain forms and little strips. This piece actually is, I started out with a print, and then I chine collé'd on it, and then I took dry pastel and worked on top of the whole thing. So it's it's a mixed medium.
That was going to be my next question.
Sorry.
If you work on it after it's
I do.
in the press.
Oh, always, almost always.
So almost all your work is unique, and sometimes we think of printmakers as making additions.
I've done that. And I've done that with etching, and I've done that with silk screen. But lately, I've been working with monotype monoprint, which allows me a great deal of space, and I can create unique pieces.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gail. And yeah, I love how unique each of these is, and yet the mark of Gail Flanery is on them all.
Thank you very much.
And now I see that Fred has emerged.
Yay.
So we can go to Fred next. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
So here's Fred's studio. Amazing piece in progress there. And then we see installation shots. Well, these are his individual pieces. So Fred, I love the contrasting combination of playfulness and precision that each of these has. Can you talk about your process with that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm in my studio here in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. You can see some of my works behind me, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the process, I'm a drawer. I do drawing. So I'll show you this other wall here that maybe. Can you see this drawing?
Well,
Yes,
we can see it, but you're little because the screen sharing is going on.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's the drawing that all this work started from. It's like a real simple
oh,
sketch.
wow, cool.
Yeah.
And very playful.
Yeah. So that's, it's basically a real quick sketch of an idea of, it's kind of like, forces. I'm thinking of forces, like expansion. It's expanding forces. This is it in cardboard here. So it's a real kind of simple idea of circles and triangles. Yeah. And then I added, these are all cardboard here. So then I added the sort of shell around it, the blue parts, like a shell, that's right, to make it a tondo, a circular piece. It's like, and so this is all like part of the series. This is very similar to the one in the gallery, and here's some more there. But anyway, I just wanted to show you those in terms of the process. Yeah, and so I do the drawings, and then I make that out of cardboard, so like I showed you, and then I'll do these out of a PVC board. This is 2 layers of PVC board glued
Yeah.
together.
So my next question is, what influences your choice of materials? So it sounds like you start off with more informal materials, playing with ideas, and then you bring in PVC for like a more finished piece.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, PVC, it's very versatile. It's like wood. You can do everything to it that you can do with wood. And I used to use wood, but the advantage of PVC, it doesn't have grain. I don't want the grain to show, and also it won't warp like wood. When they get big on wood, they can warp. But the PVC works. It's very similar to wood and the same density as wood. And
go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's in terms of the process. That's basically it: drawings, and then making maquettes out of cardboard. And then,
so is part of it scaling up? For these pieces?
Yeah.
And
Usually I do the cardboard like in maybe quarter size or third, and then blow them up like 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm interested in the palette. And the composition. So they're all symmetrical or semi-symmetrical, and with really glowing colors. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, they're not totally symmetrical. They're off. The symmetry isn't perfect. But basically, I mean, what I'm thinking of is these different forces, energies, sort of the circular energy, which is going kind of inward, and then the stars, or the triangular ones that are expanding. So these different kind of forces that are opposites, really, and the shapes are opposites. Circles and stars or triangles, and so my idea was to unify them, to make them one, and that's why I painted them like that. So it's like a gradation of paint. So it's, it's really like you can't really tell the difference. Where it begins in white in the center, but then it goes out to dark blue at the edges. But you can't really see any edges to the paint. It's all like one kind of field. So I want to unify it like
that. Very successfully. We were talking with Ellen about that idea of embodying contradictions, and I feel like you're doing that very seamlessly. So, when we look at it, we just feel the exuberance of it. But I love hearing you talk about that, because then I start to think about like, oh yeah, it's bursting forth, but this circle is really holding it tight. And then
that's right. Yeah. So it's like these 2 contradictory energies.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are held together. Yeah. Mhm.
So,
A little bit like yin and yang, maybe something like that.
so is this series continuing?
Oh yeah, I've been I have I have a lot of work. I mean I've done a lot of they're tondos, circular pieces, and I have a lot of those, and they're also they're sort of cosmological. The subject matter I see it as sort of, it's about the universe. That's sort of like a description of the forces of the universe as I see it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very big subject matter, but in very little pieces. So yeah, another contradiction.
Yes.
I like reading about cosmology, about how the universe was formed, and scientists, their explanations of our universe and how we got here, and what is this
Big
interesting to me. It's fascinating. And
big,
the latest I've been reading is that they don't think that that there's just one universe. There's billions and billions of universes, and we're just one universe.
isn't that crazy?
That's the latest thinking. And in every universe, there's every different possibility of options in each universe. So in another universe, I'm interviewing you, in this Zoom call. So,
Or you made this in green and red.
yeah, it's just like limitless universes with limitless choices and options. But that's what these scientists believe now. It's like crazy. It's like the most, you can't dream of this stuff, but that's really what they think the universe is. So it's interesting.
It's very interesting. And it's interesting. Susan, can you just run through the
Yes.
3 variations again? Because these are, similar ideas. Each one is dealing with that same idea that you're talking about, but
Yeah.
they're also very different.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to that other one, that one there, yeah. So like I was thinking of all those little circles. I kind of, they're sort of, I mean, they could be us, like one circle is me and one circle is you and one circle is Susan and one circle is Ellen, or they could be people, or they could be, planets or something like that.
I'm right
But you can
there.
see they're all coming out of the same place, that sort of that Big Bang idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting. I mean, you go back to the Big Bang and we were all nothing, and we were all the same nothing. It's so interesting.
All smashed together.
Yeah. But then also you could see it as pizza. I think someone said it looks like pizza. So okay.
That first one, I get the pizza idea. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, thanks very much, Fred.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks.
And let's move on to Susan. So Susan, there she is, has painted these 3 paintings outdoors in plein air. And as you see them, the thing that they have in common to me, one of the exciting things they have in common is that they feel so abundant. They're full of life and exuberance. And I noticed, Susan, that it's partly a compositional decision. So I just wonder what inspired this abundance for you.
Well, when I start, I'm always attracted, of course, especially because I'm using watercolors. I'm very attracted to light and how light is affecting what I see. But I'm also always attracted to pattern and abundance of pattern. And you can pretty much see that in all of my work. Pattern really plays a big part of it. And somehow the pattern just kind of leads me through, whatever idea sort of takes hold.
Really wonderful.
Thank you.
So the other thing about it, so that's amazing that you kind of pick out the pattern and really then compositionally emphasize it. But then you also have this freshness and the site specificity that is part of the magic. Can you talk about what it's like to paint on site like that?
Yes. Well, there certainly is an immediacy that happens that just is a natural part of painting outside for many reasons. There's always a little bit of unpredictability. There's time, might be windy. It might this painting that's on now. It was the hottest day of the year, and so, the weather will affect things, sound around me will affect things. If I'm speaking to people, if people are coming by and asking questions, that becomes sort of woven into the experience. If I'm by myself in this particular painting, it was a very quiet day where I don't think I saw anyone. So that affects what happens. So that kind of is part of the story as well. Sometimes I paint with friends, sometimes I paint alone, and all of that really affects what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, a kind of related question. So how much do you adhere to what you're seeing before you? Are you kind of moving things around, making decisions? And also, kind of related to that, do you ever go back and finish something in the studio and without looking, or is it all, is it complete while you're at the site?
Well, I would have to say 99% of the time, it's the moment. I really, what drives me in these pieces is the moment and that particular experience. So I do change things around a lot while I'm working. There's a certain point where um, what I'm seeing is just one part of it, and it sort of takes off, and then it becomes a painting, and it's all about the actual painting. So things do change around, and I hardly ever work on it when I bring it back to my studio. But I do use the pieces to generate other pieces that are inspired or related somehow to the ones that I do when I'm outside. But it's pretty much, it doesn't feel comfortable to continue working on them because it's really about that moment. So I usually don't do that. Yeah.
That makes sense to me because I don't know how you would get this sense of freshness. I just happened to notice a comment that came up that said, I feel like I'm standing right there. And I really think that's the strength of your work. And I love also how you said that it becomes a painting. And it really feels that too. And that's partly why I asked that question, because I feel like it would lose something if you were trying to, exactly reproduce what was in front of you.
Right.
Yeah, can we just look at the other ones?
Sure. I should be able to do that because I'm the one that's controlling this. So I just also wanted to add one other thing. These three paintings, I've been working outside doing plein air painting for a long, long time. But these three paintings were done in the last year. And they, when I was thinking about what I wanted to show, the reason that I chose these three was because my world shrunk. All of a sudden, this pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, the world that was really, really close to me became more important. So I'd always wanted to do a painting of my block, and I'd never done that. I'd always really wanted to get to know Greenwood Cemetery, and this gave me that opportunity. So, whoops, oh no, what have I done? Okay. So that's very much a running theme that moves through these three paintings.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that will be interesting to look back in years to come at the pieces that you did in 2020.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
So yes, I want to go to the chat and see what questions came up. So we have thank you, Amy, for putting the hours in the chat. You can grab that if you'd like. Amy also says, beautiful work, Ellen. Having seen them in person, I was wondering about the decision to keep them unframed. Is this how you generally show your work?
No, sometimes I do. The very large pieces obviously are unframed when I own them. But I made a conscious decision to have them all unframed this time, both for continuity and because the paper, the texture of the paper and the paint is so much a part of them. It seemed like, let's just put them up without frames. They're easily framed, but I wanted people to see them naked, as it were.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see them naked. So now I apologize if I butcher anyone's names. Jack Hazarjane says, why have you not wanted to use black paint? Also, do specific colors have certain resonating significance for you?
Well, black tends to die, it just becomes very dense, whereas the layering of different colors so that it could appear to be black, maybe from a distance, and as you get closer, it has much more dimensionality. So that's important to me. I probably just stumbled upon it, but it's something now that's become very important. I mean, it's not that people can't use black and have it be very effective, but I think in these large forms that I do, they just wouldn't have the dimensionality that they have, even though they're very flat, if I just use black paint.
And thanks, Ellen. Then Michael Amendolara says, hi, Ellen. These works seem related to prehistoric art. Is that an overt influence? Oh, and then he says, guess I have my answer because you were actually talking about that. Mary McFerrin says, hi, Ellen. These are beautiful. They remind me of Matisse's cutout series of figures. Were you aware of Matisse's work as you painted these at all?
Well, I've been aware of Matisse's work for many, many decades, and I was not thinking specifically of him, but I am delighted for any that his name and mine would be mentioned in the same. I guess that's what I could say. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of them specifically, and I mean his figures, those blue cutout figures, are just amazing.
Thank you. So now Susan Loeb says, wonderful work, Ellen. Loved your descriptions too. And then Susan Herman, there are a lot of Susans here. I don't have the vocabulary to explain why, but I find this series a special combination of power, beauty, and mystery. Well, that's a wonderful way to put it.
Thank you, Susan. Wow.
Catherine Acey says, agree entirely with my friend Susan Loeb. Fantastic work, Ellen. Karen Rule says, gorgeous. Sarah Iteralde says, congratulations, Ellen. Just love your latest work. I was wondering how your trips to Mexico have influenced your most recent work. Good question.
Yes, I probably, I know it affected it much more directly. Well, I've only been twice, but each time I came back and made something that felt very powerful, but definitely the Madonnas and the figures in Oaxaca were there in my brain, if not, unfolding on the page.
Thank you. Bryce Perlata says, I love the smudged effect on this one, but I'm not sure which one you're referring to, Bryce. Can you unmute and tell us? Is Bryce still here?
I think it's probably Gail's large piece.
Oh, maybe.
That's what we were looking, yeah.
But
yeah.
then we feel free to chime in, Bryce, if you hear us. But I'm going to move on to Janice Everett. Ellen, the shapes can have a variety of associations for me: petals, pods, even flowers abstracted. I love the ambiguity with the overall evocation of iconic power. I also find the small shapes between the main shapes and the almost positive negative effect. Fabulous work. And it's even so interesting to hear about your process.
Thank you.
It's kind of a statement. Yes.
Karen,
Really wonderfully described.
this is Susan. Did mine get on there?
Now I'm to Susan Newmark,
Oh,
and she says, I like the, the geometric and organic forms together. Do these ever become public art pieces, large size?
oh, that was for Fred. That was for Fred.
That was for Fred. Okay, Susan, did you want to ask a question to Ellen?
I just want to comment that they're powerful works, Ellen, and I think that they're really, one always thinks of the Venus of Willendorf, and Karen mentioned the iconic association, but they also have some minimal qualities. And I also think about the influence of surrealism on the early stages of the abstract expressionists, like Pollock and Gorky and Guston, and how they were really trying to come up with totemic figures. So I think they exist on a lot of levels.
Thank you.
I love those associations and that were all so masculine, and how now there's a totally feminine interpretation of such things. Um,
Uh-huh.
oh, and so that was for Fred. Fred, have you thought of doing those starburst shapes in really large?
Yeah, I'd like to make them bigger, actually, definitely, yeah. Yep. I think they look good big.
So stay tuned, people.
Yeah.
Karen Rule says, I love this piece, but I'm not sure which piece now. And then someone, Tom Keogh says, hello, Karen R. Yes, this is great. So you two know which piece you're grooving over. Rebecca Adlin says, a couple of Susan's pieces remind me of Charles Birchfield's work.
Oh, wow.
Susan, you know Charles Birchfield?
Oh, yeah, that's a wonderful compliment. Thank you.
And Janet was the one that said, I feel like I'm standing right there. And then Karen Rule says, I feel immersed in nature right now and can feel the sun and smell the flowers and hear the insects buzzing. Really wonderful. Mary McFerrin says, love the variety of artists presented. Very nice selection and interesting contrasts. Thank you. And then Susan then put the artsy link in, so you can grab the artsy link from the chat if you'd like. And then Catherine Acey says, Greenwood saved my life this year. It's in my backyard where I can walk frequently, and this piece so shows the life and beauty within this special place. Bravo, Susan.
Thank you.
And I know it's cold, but are you doing any winter Greenwood scenes?
I haven't. I don't do well in painting in the cold, unfortunately. But I've started actually working, doing a lot of interior pieces, but I do look forward to going outside once it gets a little warmer. But maybe someday I'll do a winter scene there. Bundle up enough.
So if anybody has other questions and they'd like to unmute and ask the artist specifically, that now would be a good time. Questions or comments?
Oh, well, I wanted to ask Ellen, I put it in the chat. Do you know Myron Stout? He's the artist Myron Stout, his work?
Yes.
Ellen?
I'm not sure I do.
Oh, yeah, I just came across his work, and a lot of it reminds me of what you're doing. It's really, yeah, it's worth checking out. Yeah.
I'll
Myron.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds vaguely familiar, like maybe we went to school together. So I'll check that out.
And
I just wanted to say that it's a beautiful show. Both shows are really beautiful. And I'm I'm really glad that I get to see them up close and personal. So anybody who's watching, if you can go to the gallery, they're powerful now, but when you see them in person, they're really beautiful pieces. And just as a member of 440, I just love these artist talks because they really do inspire me in many ways to go back to my work and pick up on some of the things that are mentioned during these talks. So thank you. It's been a really nice afternoon.
Thanks, Joanne. And Jack Hazarjan also kind of echoes that. He says, thanks to all the artists who presented today for their time and sharing of insights. Also, thanks to all the organizers of this webinar and to Gallery 440. Best wishes to all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to say as one of the artists that it's so extraordinary because in all the years that I've been at 440, you know, maybe there are 15 people who can fit in the gallery, you know, who happen to be free at 440 on a Sunday and in Brooklyn and able to come, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a wonderful thing to have so many, to be speaking to so many people that I don't know. And people that I do know. And it's really wonderful, near and far. So, you know, it's really, really been lovely.
I'll second that. Thank you.
I'll third that. It's really, yeah, it's just a wonderful way of sharing the work. And I totally appreciate everyone that came today. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh, I'd like to say, if you get a chance to go to the gallery and see the work in person, it looks much better.
True that.
So I just want to say before people start zooming off, that our next solo show is David Stock, amazing photography. Oh, David, you're here. I just forgot the name of the show. What's the title? He was here.
I think it's something. It's a colorful new work in color.
I believe it's just new work.
New works in
New
color.
work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's from February 10th to March 14th. It'll be hanging in the gallery. And his artist talk will also be a virtual opening. So I hope you'll join us. It's scheduled for Saturday, February 13th from 6 to 7:30. So a different time slot for that. And you can register on the website, or Susan, can you put it in the chat? Do you have the
Yes,
link for the next webinar? Well, it's not a webinar. What
I don't have the link for the next one. I'm sorry.
Okay, so you'll have to grab it off the website. But thank you all so much for coming, and it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Yeah. Thank you. Well
Thank
done.
you.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Great
Karen.
moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Bravo.
Karen.
Very good job. Very nice.
Lovely.
I asked you some good questions in that other universe.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was so interesting.
you.
Very inspirational.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm
Bye,
seeing
everyone.
people now. Hello, hello.
Hi, Susan.
Hard to take it all in.
Yes, exactly. So,
Bye-bye.
okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good work, Karen.